Same old tricks, Rick's killing Ricks. This episode was intense, yo! Not only was there a mega lore dump about Evil Morty's origins and perspectives within the first 30 seconds of the episode, Rick Prime's storyline is pretty much wrapped. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't think that Rick Prime could be explained, expanded on, and annihilated in 23 minutes, but the boys at Rick and Morty have done it again. We have a bonkers amount of Easter eggs, details, speculation, and character analysis to do. You're watching WhitneyVision, and this is our breakdown of Unmortricken. This is your spoiler warning! If you haven't seen Season 7, Episode 5 yet, hit pause on this video and come back once your portal gun is triple strapped. This week's episode title, Unmortricken, is a play on the 90s Western film Unforgiven. Directed by and starring Clint Eastwood, this cowpoke tale is about an aging outlaw and murderer who agrees to come out of retirement for one last job. Considering that Evil Morty came out of hiding beyond the central finite curve for this adventure, and the fact that Rick C-137 is basically the cocky yet significantly less qualified one in this particular episode, I'd say that Evil Morty is the William Money character and Rick is the Schlofield kid. The episode opens on Dimension 79V, aka Evil Morty's homeworld. Prior to this episode, we had no idea what this dude's true origin story actually was. Back in Season 3's Ricklantis mix-up, aka Tales from the Citadel, President Morty, aka Evil Morty, tells reporters that he can't remember his original dimension because he and his original Rick moved around so much. That was such a believable lie because A, he's a politician, and B, if other Ricks and Mortys are like our Ricks and Mortys, and they are, they've all definitely accidentally Mr. Frundled, Cronenberged, or squirreled a planet or two. He made himself relatable by pretending that he was just like them, weak, beaten down, and dragged along by his Rick until he decided to enact change. In reality, the Rickest Morty just snapped. After fetching crystals from yet another butthole, he's sticky and gross and tired of being disrespected by his grandpa. Unlike our Morty, who gets mad at Rick but usually finds a way to forgive him, Evil Morty took a more drastic approach. After encouraging him to get drunk, Morty goes up to his room and invents the receiving device we saw the Citadel guards remove from Evil Rick's brain in Season 1's Close Rick Counters of the Rick kind. The next morning, Rick 79V greets his grandson with, "You're my little buddy, Rick and Morty, 100 years, forever!" A callback to Rick yelling this mantra in his grandson's face after their first adventure at the end of the pilot. Evil Morty uses the transmitter in his cybernetic eye, hidden behind his eye patch, to control the receiver in Rick 79V's mind, puppeteering his original grandpa to become Evil Rick in his plan to overthrow the Citadel. When they arrive at the Citadel, they head into the Morty Agency, where Mortys are paired with Ricks. On the countertop, there's a Mortvember calendar next to some getting started pamphlets, including "Ah Geez, the Perfect Fit" brochure. Agency Rick chastises Evil Morty for wearing an eye patch, saying, "You know how we feel about pirates." A callback to Season 3's The Rick Cherry and Morty date, when Rick reveals that he has a phobia of pirates, aka Basiloharpaxophobia. After killing Cop Rick and Agency Rick, Evil Morty uses the computer to delete himself from the Morty directory. He's easy to find because he's the only one not smiling, and his entry confirms that he's from Universe 79V. In the background, you can see that that poor guy was in the middle of a game of solitaire when he got murdered. Evil Morty and Evil Rick go on a portal-hopping murder spree, the same one we saw them enact in Close Rick Counters of the Rick kind. That episode's intro showed us the same scene we see here, where the two of them kill Rick and kidnap Morty. When the Council of Ricks later shows up to take our Rick and Morty to the Citadel, they reveal that 27 Ricks and 27 Mortys have either been slain or kidnapped, including the scientist formerly known as Rick. In this week's episode, we actually see Evil Morty and Evil Rick travel to their dimension, where the family is decked out in Prince outfits. Even Snowball is dressed like Prince, and next to his portrait is a framed picture of a red car in homage to Prince's song Little Red Corvette. Afterwards, we see this duo take down this turtleneck-wearing version of the Smith-Sanchez family. At first, I thought Rick and Morty were supposed to be dressed like Steve Jobs parodies, but it looks like Snowball is going for more of a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson gold necklace vibe. Next, we flash back to the Wall of Tortured Mortys, also from Close Rick Counters of the Rick kind, which Evil Morty used to mask his location from unwanted Ricks. Although Rick 79V tries to kill himself, Evil Morty refuses to let him, instead forcing him to continue his facade as Evil Rick. We see the orphaned Mortys that are Morty encouraged to break free from their imprisonment, and we see the same scene from that episode where they attack and annihilate Evil Rick. What we didn't see in that episode, however, was that one of the council members actually escorts Evil Morty away from the chaos so that he can return to the sea of newly freed Mortys undetected. He's able to blend in by stomping on his eye patch and is returned to the streets of the Citadel. Evil Morty finds a newspaper that says that due to the new power vacuum, the Citadel will be holding an election to fill it. Back in Season 3's The Rick Shank Redemption, Rick destroys both the Council of Ricks and the Galactic Federation by hacking the latter's system and altering their currency, Blemflarks, so that one Blemflark now equaled 0 Blemflarks. This is clearly when he decides to adopt his alter ego, President Morty, to fill that power vacuum with his sinister plot. The first time we saw President Morty give this speech was back in Season 3's Tales from the Citadel, when the Rick newscasters were making fun of it on air. Although we see his campaign office celebrating with him when he watched the speech on TV in this episode, back in Tales from the Citadel, his campaign manager Morty was really upset with the outcome and encouraged him to drop out of the race. Next, we see Rick C-137 shoot at Evil Morty's force fields as they flee, a repeat of the same scene in Season 5's Rick Mirai Jack. If you recall, Evil Morty spent their brief dinner meeting downloading Rick's brain so that he can learn everything he needs to know about the central finite curve. The final scene from Rick Mirai Jack plays in this episode as well, showing Evil Morty's journey beyond the CFC and through his own golden portal. But now, we're experiencing Evil Morty's adventures in real time instead of incredibly lore-heavy flashbacks. Finally alone, he runs and flies through a strange new planet, surrounded by crystal asteroids and black holes, and filled with fearsome space monsters. Apparently, this Jetson parody family has also just discovered portal travel, and so have their alternate variations. Actually, there are a ton of different portals of different shapes, sizes, and colors littering the space in and around this planet. Likely because Rick is pulling them in with his reality combination device. Or, like the knockoff Jetsons, maybe this is just where some beginners with portal guns accidentally end up. As Evil Morty gets closer to home, you can see the reality-destroying monster from the beginning of Season 5's Mort Dinner Rick Andre hot on his tail. Inside his new hidden domicile, he's created himself the perfect lush utopia, complete with a robot butler a la Rosie the Robot from the Jetsons. But despite loading up a freshly gathered pink crystal to power his home's defense shield, another monster comes crashing through, courtesy of Rick C-137's incursions. Rick's lab is hooked up to a series of tubes and portals, and is using his tech to consolidate Rick Prime's decoys by merging dimensions. Evil Morty immediately calls him out for fracking the central finite curve for his own personal gain, and suggests that he at least use a filter for probability stasis so that he's not just pulling in randos with no specificity. Damn dude, not only did Evil Morty wipe the floor with an entire citadel of Ricks, including C-137, he's still proving with every snarky syllable that the Rickest Morty is smarter than the Rickest Rick. But although Evil Morty's tweak to Rick's program pulls in what appears to be the correct Rick Prime, it turns out to be another decoy that transforms into an inky black substance that collects all three of them. They're transported to Rick Prime's Rick Trap, already full of variants like Nerd Rick, Debonair Rick, Wife Beater Rick, Heart Locket Rick, Old Man Rick, and Indiana Jones Rick. The Ricks and both Mortys are placed in a kill chamber where Rick Prime explains that he didn't just kill their individual wives, he actually wiped every single version of Diane from every single universe using the weapon too cool for a name, aka the Omega device. That's why we've never come across another Diane in another reality. She simply ceased to exist in each timeline. So unlike the infinite numbers of Mortys, Beths, Jerrys, and Summers, she's completely irreplaceable no matter where Rick looks. With help from Evil Morty, Rick defeats each of Rick Prime's traps. Together, they combine their portal guns with the black goo from the original trap as a vector, and use the mashup portal fluid to get themselves home. Interestingly, Evil Morty says that Rick Prime can't be using a portal fluid blocker because his advanced portal fluid is capable of bypassing that kind of obstacle. Not only did he have to invent his own portal fluid to help him travel beyond the CFC, he also likely had to alter his recipe because he tampered with the Citadel's batch back in Rick Mirai Jack, barring Rick's and Morty's from evacuating. Back in the lab, Rick uses the goo to help him locate Rick Prime. You can see that he's still trying to identify his nemesis by his butt. A callback to Season 6's Solarix when Prime kept shaking his moneymaker at C-137 and Morty. The trio makes their way to Prime's base, where the Omega device is up and running again, ready for its next use. This time, Prime targets Slow Mobius, Rick's uncle and one of the partygoers from Season 1's Rixie Business. As the Omega device erases him from every reality, we lose Baseball Slow, Matador Slow, Bear King Slow, Picasso Slow, Squirrel Slow, and Family Man Slow. As they fight Rick Prime and his decoys, Evil Morty shows off more of his cybernetic enhancements. He's got a kick-ass sword, Doc Ock arms equipped with bombs, and his cybernetic eye can scan for weapons prior to his opponent's use. Unfortunately, the only weapon he can't accurately scan is Kuato Rick, a parody of Kuato from Total Recall, aka the mutant baby attached to his conjoined twin, George. We also see that Rick Prime has a chainsaw tongue, and I'm like, okay, that's the pot calling the kettle bad at eating his wife's pussy. With Evil Morty and Rick seemingly down for the count, Morty approaches his OG, original grandpa, to say hello for the first time. But surprise! It's not regular Morty, it's Evil Morty in disguise, once again delivering a flawless performance. He even took the time to swap out their t-shirts. After being shot by Kuato Rick, Evil Morty's yellow t-shirt has a hole in the right sleeve. He shoots Prime in the forehead, short-circuiting his cybernetic implants temporarily. He uses his own tech to fry Rick Prime's backups, and downloads Schematics Boogerades V2, which likely holds the plans for the Omega device. From Season 3's Morty's Mind Blowers and Season 6's Solarix, we learned that Rick always titles his important files this way. Evil Morty revives C-137 and leaves him to deal with Prime. As Rick punches his nemesis to death, Prime taunts him, reminding him that he showed him infinity and all he wants to do is hang out with his grandson. Although he could have used his time to stop Evil Morty from stealing the plans for the Omega device, he chose instead to beat the shit out of the guy who killed his wife. And honestly, if I found out that my Rick name was Dead Wife Rick, I might be pretty mad at him too. After destroying the Omega device's core so that Rick can't copy it, Evil Morty warns C-137 that he better not bother him again if he doesn't want the Rick experiment to end. He does, however, leave the door open for a future collaboration by mentioning that Rick is different from the other Ricks and might be of use to him later on. As Morty hugs his grandpa, Rick begins to disassociate, and Mazzy Star's Look On Down from the Bridge begins to play. Despite going through the motions at home, he's still pretty shell-shocked from losing his last connection to Diane, achieving his life's sole purpose, and dealing with a Morty smarter than him and Rick Prime combined. This is a callback to the ending of Season 1's Rick Potion number 9, when the same song plays as Morty comes to terms with the fact that he had to bury his own mutilated corpse in the backyard and start his life over in a different universe with a variant family. Outside on the driveway, Beth, Space Beth, and Jerry are putting together a new and improved space cruiser for Rick. Honestly, I wonder if his new ship will still have his dead wife's voice as the AI, or if that'll be too much for him after everything he's been through. This abrupt end to Rick Prime's saga is certainly the biggest shakeup we've seen all season, but I believe that these three main characters, Rick C-137, Rick Prime, and Evil Morty, have more going on inside them than what we're shown on the surface. Take Prime, for example. At the end of Solarix, Morty was worried that his grandpa might be using him as bait to lure Prime to their new home in the Parmesian universe. Rick reassured him that he wouldn't do that because Rick Prime doesn't care about anyone or anything. He's the quote-unquote real deal, according to Rick. And to him, the real deal means a Rick that's unburdened, unforgiving, unapologetic, and uncaring. But Rick Prime isn't actually the real deal, whether Rick can see it or not. If Rick Prime truly didn't give a shit about any Rick or any Morty, he wouldn't have built a trap and torture device for the Ricks who came looking for him. Rick Prime enjoyed toying with these inferior Ricks. Without enough Ricks to fill his little box, the rest of the mechanism couldn't even start up. He needed an audience for his depravity. Despite insisting that sidekicks are stupid and family is a waste of time, every other Rick in existence lived rent-free in this dude's head the entire time. He wasn't just off adventuring and living his life, he was building these weird-ass Minecraft private server torture chambers specifically to hurt other Ricks. Rick Prime can brag all he wants about being an aloof, cool guy who doesn't care about anyone or anything, but it's like, shut up, you goth. You need an audience just as much as Rick needs Morty. Get over yourself. When Rick goes through his current existential crisis, however, I'm sure he won't be thinking of that. He'll be thinking of all the thoughts that Evil Morty predicted he would. What is his purpose without a nemesis to hunt? What will he obsess over now that the man he's hunted for decades is finally dead? And how will he live with knowing that, without Evil Morty's immense help, he'd be dead and Rick Prime would have bested him again? Evil Morty actually seems to be the real deal in the wake of Rick Prime's absence. Based on everything we learned about him in his last two on-screen appearances alone, we know that this guy actually values solitude more than anyone else on this side of the central finite curve. He's like a tiny Thanos in a yellow shirt. After wiping out half the Ricks and Mortys at the Citadel, he just wanted to sit alone in his garden and watch the sunrise on a grateful universe. He wanted to be alone so badly that he literally ripped open the CFC and clawed his way into infinite oblivion just to escape. According to Evil Morty, he's actually the one who doesn't care about anything or anyone, and has proven it twice in a row now. He's the unforgiving, uncaring, unrepentant guy that Rick Prime wanted to be. Or is he? Because like Rick Prime, Evil Morty's actions aren't fully lining up with his words. He says he wants to be alone, right? Then why go on this adventure with Rick at all? He says it's because he wants to ensure his future privacy. But if that was the case, why not just use the Omega device to fry all the Ricks, Mortys, Summers, Beths, and Jerrys in the multiverse to get rid of them once and for all? 1,000 vengeful Summers won't come after you if you wipe all of those Summers from the multiverse. I think that even though he'd never admit it, a very small part of Evil Morty, buried way deep down, secretly enjoyed going on adventures with Morty and C-137. Think about it. Evil Morty never felt respected by Rick 79V. He felt constantly degraded and devalued, which ultimately led to his rebellion. In Close Rick Counters and Rick Mirai Jack, he sees firsthand how much love and respect our Rick and Morty have for each other. Even in their worst moments, when all hope seems lost, these two choose each other time and again. Although Rick is usually pretty begrudging with the kudos he gives Morty, he truly loves his grandson and has been actively trying to heal his relationships with his family through therapy. Additionally, we actually see C-137 speaking to Evil Morty like an equal while they're working together to solve Prime's trap, which he never experienced with his original grandpa. In Rick Mirai Jack, Evil Morty asks Morty if he wants to join him on his expedition beyond the central finite curve. Morty chooses to stay with his grandpa, and Evil Morty tells him that the second seat in his ship is just a toilet seat anyway. At the time, I believed him, but after this episode, I think that Evil Morty might have been bluffing about the toilet seat. In Unmortricken, he asks Morty if he wants to come with him through the portal just like he asked him to come with him in his ship in Rick Mirai Jack. This time, when Morty doesn't follow immediately, Evil Morty actually doubles back to check if he's following him. And I think that that's partially because a part of him really does want a little company. I mean, sure, solitude is great, and I absolutely respect that this guy is an introvert. But after all that time alone, it has to feel kind of nice to go on adventures with people who respect you for who you are. So here's my theory. Even though C-137 believes that Rick Prime was the real deal, and Evil Morty believes that he himself is the real deal, I think that their definition of the real deal is flawed. The real deal Rick or Morty isn't the least caring or the most violent or the most alone. The real deal is having a balance between genius and family, between science fiction and reality, between adventures and spaghetti dinners. At the end of the day, our Rick didn't win because he was smarter or more well-equipped than Rick Prime. He won because a variant of his grandson stepped in to help him when he was losing. You can tell me all you want that Evil Morty only rescued him to torture him with unending purposelessness, but I think that he saved the only grandpa who's ever shown him respect. And the fact that Rick has someone who's willing to fight beside him proves that he's a better Rick than Prime will ever be. Prime died alone, and C-137 walked away with 2 grandsons still intact. As worthless and purposeless as he feels right now, the reality is that having a family that cares about him makes him stronger than any of his enemies. The post-credits scene follows up with Mrs. Mobius as she navigates life without her husband. Mirroring Rick's origin story montage from Rick Mirai Jack, we see Mrs. Mobius go down the same dark path after her family's loss. Rick's sad theme song from that scene plays while we watch her start drinking, building her own space cruiser, searching the galaxy for her husband's killer, and eating at a ramen bar. Unlike Rick, however, Mrs. Mobius meets an alien at the ramen bar with a similar story to hers. The alien has a tattoo of his late wife on his hand, just like Mrs. Mobius's never slow knuckle tats that accompany portraits of her husband. These two crazy kids fall in love and blend their families, paying respect to their original partners by displaying their photos in the living room in a place of honor. This is basically the life that Rick could have had if he allowed himself to move on from Diane's death, instead of single-mindedly focusing his entire existence on revenge. There's a quote by Chuck Palahniuk that I love that gives me hope for Rick's future without Prime. It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything. True, he's in a catatonic state of uselessness right now, but that's Dr. Wong's problem to solve. Without this batshit bananas obsession weighing him down, Rick is finally free to find out who he really is. Starting over is always scary, even for the smartest man in the universe. But it can also lead you to places you never thought you'd go. Fuck it, dude, maybe Rick will finally hit the dating pool again. He can be on The Golden Bachelor. He can do whatever he wants. These are all the Easter eggs and details that I found in Unmortricken, but I want to know what I missed in the comments. Like and subscribe to my channel for more Rick and Morty breakdowns, and be sure to check out the latest episode of Guardians of the Galaxy next. I'm Scarlet Wit, and you're watching WhitneyVision.